Hello and welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me today is a man who must be very cold because he has all of his scarves there with him. It's Logan Stump.
Yeah, it's cold here in Central Florida. I think it was it was kind of I think it was like an 89, 90 kind of day with like humidity of about 150. So, real nice day. Yeah, I had my scarves on. I've got like long sleeves on. It's cold out here, man. I don't know how they do it down here in Central Florida, but I guess to each their own.
It is actually pretty nice up here in good old Maryland right now. It's like a probably like low 80s. Feels pretty good. But it's gonna be rainy, so not looking forward to that. We got a big show for you today. We do have a guest that'll be joining us in a little bit, so we're going to try to get through the score lines and such before they jump on. So let's go ahead and just kind of dive in as soon as possible here. We had a weekend that started on we had the midweek games. We did have the Leagues Cup, which SKC got smashed in by Club Leon 6-1. They were not taking it that seriously, so that was kind of a bummer. They never really took the Champions League that seriously either, so it's kind of just a common trend. You know what? It might work for them. They might end up being Supporters Shield or top of the Western Conference this year. So whatever works for them, whatever cup they're pretty much putting as their number one, I can see why they would be aiming for MLS Cup because I feel like that's probably the one most managers get judged on, right? So I can kind of understand why they would do that. Seattle, though, they were like, we're going to treat this seriously, and they went out and beat Tigres 3-0, and just was a fantastic game on last Tuesday. It was a lot of fun to watch, much more fun to watch than the Kansas City game. Then on Wednesday, we had Monterrey versus Cruz Azul in the Champions League. Monterrey has the advantage after one leg, 1-0. NYCFC drew with Pumas in the League's Cup, but Pumas wins 3-2 on penalty kicks. I was very excited because New York City FC had taken the lead, I think, a few times. They kept getting called back for offside. They finally take the lead, and then it ends up, being all for naught, right? They lose. Because I think the winner of that is supposed to face Orlando and Santos, and Orlando went out there and lost to Santos 1-0. Oh, no, they faced Seattle. That's right, because Logan, before your time, let me sit down for story time with Jordan here.
I'm sitting.
Before your time, Santos and Seattle faced off quite a few times in the Champions League, and they had quite the rivalry. And at that time, they also had Herculez Gomez who played for Santos. He is an ESPN analyst now, but he was a Santos player. He scored quite a few goals against Seattle, knocked them out. And then those were like the eras where we would win like the home leg and get battered in the away leg. Yeah. So now we've still come a long way. So setting up for that kind of rebirth of a rivalry is actually pretty fascinating. Club America beat Philadelphia 2-0. I will say, guess what? I watched the replay of this when I was in Doubleday Cafe at Cooperstown.
Wow.
They had it on Fox Soccer Plus.
That's amazing. Really? Like on in the bar?
Yeah, it was on in the bar.
Wow, that's pretty big.
Yeah, no, I wasn't just saying. I was just.
I thought you just meant like on your phone.
No.
Jordan's over in the cafe with his wife, just kind of creeping in a game here.
No, they were actually playing it, which I thought was pretty cool.
The players were playing.
That's why I made note of it. It would not have been as good of a story if it was not the case. But the Union have some work to do here as they conceded in like the 16th minute on a free kick and then again later in the game. But as I talked with Todd, I was on with Todd as we shared on our Twitter on the Free Kick Pod. He had me back on. We talked some MLS transfers and stuff, and also talked some Union, and we talked about the Club America game before it happened. And Todd has been pointing out all this season how the Union have been giving up goals in like the first 15 minutes of each half, and that happened in the first half. And when you're away from home at Azteca especially, it's something you can't really afford to do. So the Union have some work to do in Chester, especially giving up that other goal. It would have been fine if it was 1-0. I think we could really make a push at home, but it does not seem to be the case. Then we had the MLS weekend start on Friday. San Jose versus Vancouver ended up 0-0 in San Jose. LA Galaxy beat Minnesota 1-0 in Minnesota at Allianz Field. So our friend Jack and AJ from the Final Third were there to celebrate Jack's 21st birthday. Happy 21st birthday, Jack, if you're listening. And if you're not listening, still happy birthday. But LA Galaxy win that one.
We don't wish you happy birthday if you don't listen to our show.
Montreal beat New York 2-1 to continue their great start to the season this year. Then we have New York City FC beating Miami 2-0 as they continue their ascension to the top here, and they played that one in Red Bull Arena. Toronto lose to New England 2-1 at BMO Field as New England continue their trot to the Supporter Shield. SKC then beat Dallas 2-0, a Dallas that was kind of resurging for a little bit there. So nice result for SKC there to get that. Then we had Houston 1, Colorado Rapids 3. And then we had Real Salt Lake beating Austin 1-0 at Rio Tinto. Lots of hashtag Wolf out this weekend. On Sunday, we had some great games on Sunday. So you had Atlanta beat LAFC 1-0. Chicago with the upset over Columbus 1-0, as Columbus just have not been good this season at all. And it's just one of those weird situations where everybody thought they'd run away with it. But this is MLS, and it doesn't usually happen that way. And then we had the Nashville SC beat DC United 5-2. DC took the early lead there, and Nashville said, no, we're at home. We're going to win this game like we've been doing all season. We have not lost at home. And they go and put 5 on DC United, who's been good this year. DC United have been good this year. Then we had at Providence Park, we had the Cascadia Cup matchup, Portland Timbers versus Seattle Sounders, and this one was a blast to watch. Would have been better in person, just saying. But we hit Freddie Montero in the 13th minute. Then he scores again in the 29th minute. Blanco pulls one back to make it 2-1. And then it's 2-2 in the 52nd minute. And then in the 55th minute, Rui Diaz scores. Then Rui Diaz scores in the 72nd. Madronda in the 77th, and Benazet in the 90+4. And it finishes 6-2 Seattle as they seem to be back on track now. As Portland have been starting to do better. And now we end up with the tables looking a little bit like so. So Kansas City, top of the West with 37 points, and Seattle in second with 36. They both played 19 games, and guess what? The team that took so long to get their first loss is now in second place, so I guess that didn't matter in the end. SKC actually still has more losses than Seattle, but has one more win, and which helps give them a little bit of an edge there. LA Galaxy is only 1 point behind Seattle. We've kind of been talking about SKC and Seattle all year. And we talked about how good LA has been. But LA is only 1 point behind Seattle and 2 points behind SKC without Chicharito. Pretty remarkable. We get Colorado with 31 points in 4th place after only 17 games. So if Colorado gets their 2 games in hand and get 6 more points, they'd be even with SKC. Think about that. That's kind of crazy. I don't know how that works out because the points per game doesn't match. But yeah, that would track. 2 more wins would give them 37 points. Minnesota is in 5th with 26 points. RSL in 6th with 24 points, and Portland in 7th with 23. Then we have LAFC in 8th with 23 points, San Jose in 9th with 22 points, Dallas in 10th with 21 points. Dallas starting to really rise up to where they're only 2 points out of a playoff spot. Houston is in 11th with 18 points, Vancouver in 12th with 17 points, Austin in 13th with 16 points, and really, Austin's even only 7 points out of a playoff spot. Not that they'll probably make it there, but just crazy to think that the West is really that bunched up, and that actually, for as much as we talk about SKC and Seattle, LA Galaxy really been hanging in there tough, even with that bad goal differential.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole table itself. I mean, if you look at just supporters, you look at the East, you look at teams at the East that are looking good, you look at teams in the West that are looking good. Obviously, and we keep talking about the darlings that are New England. It's a really good team in New England. They're tough to beat. A lot of these teams go into New England and they have a hard time playing in New England just because of how well they've been playing. And they've been doing this recently without Carlos Gil. So, they're playing without the team captain. They're playing without a guy that's more than likely winning MVP should he come back healthy. This team, it's 12 points clear. Yes, NYCFC has 2 points or 2 games in hand. They can make up a little bit of ground, but that's still, I mean, even if they win those 2 games in hand, you're putting them at 37 points. There's still 6 points off of the top 2 games that they need to win. New England just kind of looks like they're that person that's being hunted in the East. And then when you talk about the West, Jordan, it's like it's starting to get bunched up enough to where people are starting to kind of catch each other, it kind of knocking each other back and forth. And I do think, I mean, seriously, if you look at the table, look at the games in hand. I mean, there's a lot of jockeying for position that can happen. And just like we talked about before, and I'm sure we'll talk about this with our guest that's coming on, these teams are really trying to fight for home field advantage, because in home field advantage in MLS, I mean, teams really can make a run if they have that nice home field advantage, can get the ball in control at their home field rather than playing on the road, trying to go into like a Gillette Stadium or an Exploria Stadium, like Lumen Field. I mean, those are difficult places to play as is. Add the playoffs and the implications in behind it. With some of these guys that are going to be coming back to form, you're seeing some guys come back, and we'll talk a little bit about some guys that are coming back to help this team that we're getting ready to preview here or talk about, this game coming up. But now, I mean, seriously, it's a bunched up group. The West looks like it could go any direction. I mean, you're looking at a San Jose team that many kind of thought, hey, maybe they're going to bounce out, but now they're starting to gain some traction. You're having Dallas, who we thought was, playing really well and then kind of stumbled a little bit and came back. And, these teams are all jockeying for positions. About 15 games left, 16 games left, 17 on for some of them. So it'll be really interesting just to see. I can't wait for them to kind of even out. I hate tables that look like this just because it's hard to tell just exactly what position you're in. I know they're probably not thinking too much about it. I would say that the target for a lot of these teams now, as they look at the playoff table, they're looking at, okay, what do we need to get home field advantage? What can we do to help our team get to that point so we can avoid going on the road for our first round in the playoffs?
Yeah, the West is just crazy here. We're going to talk about the East here in a little bit, like you said, to preview. We're going to have a guest on about Nashville here. All right, let's go ahead and talk the East real quick before we welcome our guest into the show. So the East is not as bunched up, I guess you could say. Definitely not as much as the West, I would would say. Yeah, there's a bigger gap between the bottom and the playoff teams. And there's also a big gap from first and second place. New England in first place with 43 points out of 20 games. NYCFC is in second with 31 points after 18 games. Nashville in third with 31 points out of 19 games. We'll talk about them in just a few moments. Orlando down to fourth after they have 30 points out of 18 matches. So they can actually, with their game in hand against Nashville, leapfrog them. Philadelphia down to fifth with 28 points out of 19 matches. They're actually only 1 point above DC United. So as good as we usually talk about the Union, DC United really snuck under this radar recently, and they have 27 points in sixth place. Montreal with 26 points in seventh place. And then we have the Crew, who have now fallen out of the top seven. They're in eighth place with 24 points. Atlanta have now moved up to ninth place with 21 points. They're in reach of a playoff spot after letting go of their manager, and now they are signing Gonzalo Pineda from Seattle Sounders, an assistant from there, and I think that's going to be a good fit for them. And he's going to start taking over soon. I think he's taking over training now, but I think the interim is still kind of in charge for the next two matches, I believe it was. Then we have the Red Bull, Chicago in 10th with 20 points. Red Bulls in 11th with 19. I think they may need a new manager at some point because I know fans are getting a little frustrated with how that's going. Miami in 12th with 16 points. Cincinnati in 13th with 16 points. And Toronto still at the bottom with 15 points. So there's an 11-point gap from 14th to 7th, while the West is a 7-point swing. So the West definitely a little bit more open, but the East has the class of MLS in it with the Revs. And then NYCFC really, like I said, have shot up to second place. And Nashville, who's been the surprise. And we're going to get ready to welcome on a guest talking about them. But just real quick about Revs, and I guess maybe how surprising NYCFC have been.
Yeah, I think, NYCFC kind of dropped down the table, came back up, really became contenders in the East. I remember watching the game that they played against Orlando when I was there. I was really impressed with just the way that they played. I think adding Thiago, adding that fire up in the front on the wing, I think that's helped tremendously. I think they've gotten confidence. And they're a tough they're a tough team to beat at home, just like any team in the MLS. But I think NYCFC, you get that added. Playing a baseball stadium, playing a small pitch, this is a really difficult place to come in and play. So I think that with NYCFC, you're looking at a team that is on the rise and trying to chase down some of these big guys in the East. And nobody really talked about them. Nobody talked about Nashville really either. I think a lot of people, when you look at projections and power rankings, Nashville was in a place where, they had them at the edge of the playoffs, maybe not in that top four, but now you see this team. They have firepower. Their defense was really good last year as well. And now they're getting all their guys back. Alistair Johnston's coming back. Walker Zimmerman was subbed in last night. So he's back to full force. And I just like what they're doing in Nashville. I mean, I think it's interesting when you look at a team, but, we talked a lot about teams that have a really tough time when they come in. Like, what's the blueprint in MLS? And a lot of these owners come in, like a David Beckham, like, different owners that come in from different situations. Maybe they've owned in Europe. Maybe they've played in Europe and don't understand the situation in MLS. And I think it's tough for teams to come in and find their footing, especially for expansion teams. Now you're looking at a team that's its second year, and it seems like they've found consistency. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the veteran presences that they have that have been in MLS and have been added into the mix. I think that's been a huge advantage for them. But you're talking about the rest of the East, a Philly team that's kind of struggled here lately. You're looking at Orlando, who's played pretty well, but have struggled more so lately now that, their defense hasn't played as well. And if Nani's not scoring and creating, what's really going to happen? DK's not healthy. Pato's not healthy. Benji Michel hasn't quite been there. What does that look like for Orlando? How do they score? Same thing with Philly. I think there's issues giving up in the defense. Their defense hasn't been as good as it had. And they're not getting the goals that they really needed. DC United, a surprise. Montreal, also a surprise. And Columbus is there again in the 8th spot. looking up at the rest of the table, going, "Where's our playoff spot?" And it seems like nobody's willing to kind of relinquish this spot in the playoffs. And I think that you're looking at a very good 7 teams with Columbus chasing. And if Columbus can fire on cylinders, you know how dangerous they are. Joseph played pretty well. Atlanta grabbed a couple wins. And I think when you add more games with Joseph and he scores more goals and gets more comfortable, that team can change a little bit. So again, pretty good teams up here at the top. I think that's kind of where you and I draw the line, is like right around that 9th, 8th spot, because I think it's difficult to kind of figure out what exactly we are going, or what they're going to do as far as the playoffs are concerned.
All right, let's go ahead and take a short break, and we'll be back with color commentator for Nashville SC, Jamie Watson. And we are back from our break, and we have Nashville SC color commentator Jamie Watson joining us. How are you today, Jamie?
I'm doing great, Jordan. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it, Logan.
Yeah, no, it's great. We were looking forward to it. We're like, okay, we got to find a Nashville. We had Drake Hills on to preview the season. We were crazy enough to go team by team for, what was it, Jordan? Maybe 30 days.
Yeah,
had Drake on, and it was bonkers. But no, we were looking for somebody, and I was like, you know what, Jamie? Like, I like the ties to Orlando City. I was like, let's have Jamie on. So
Drake's a great guest, though, that he would give you tons of good insight. He's one of the people that follows the team closest. He does a great job. Him and a couple of people, Ben Wright's another great one, Tim Sullivan. There's tons of them. Those are the first ones that come to mind. They do a great job, though, covering the team.
Awesome. So we were just, this has been a surprising, I guess you would say, season so far for Nashville after kind of a surprising start that they had last year in MLS. This is only their, second year in the league, and made the playoffs, made some upsets against Toronto. And then they're now currently, before this week, we're around second place, but now they're sitting in third place. And they just had a big game against DC United where they have not lost at home, and they went, down early in the game and made a comeback. What is it about this team, especially, like Dax has played like 400 games or whatever now, but what is it about this team that has given them the good start to MLS? Is it, Gary Smith, he's been around the league in the past, but what is it specifically, you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm wondering how long you have to spend above a playoff line in your MLS existence before it's less of a surprise that I think Nashville has spent more time above it than not. I think we did the numbers the other day. We were talking about it because there was a few people that were quite upset about the loss to Inter Miami, and people were vocally upset and saying it was, one of the worst losses in team history. And I think I said something like, well yeah, there's only been 9 of them. So it's pretty easy. Like, you know what I mean? To say
right.
that it's a loss. And it's getting to a point now when teams are losing games, and Nashville's losing games, and people are upset about it, like genuinely really upset about it. I think it's starting to show that the mind shift is where Nashville expect to get a result in every game that they play. I think I looked at it. I think 3 out of every 4 matches, they get a result right around those numbers. I'm not a mathematician. I was like a C average math, but roughly about 3 out of 4 matches, they're getting results. And especially at Nissan Stadium, they've been fantastic. 7-0-5 on the season. When you look at the way Nashville SC was built, Mike Jacobs, I think, has flown so far under the radar with the credit that he should be getting, along with his scouting staff and his analytics department and Gary Smith, because Nashville SC utilized intra-league trades and mechanisms that MLS provides to acquire some of the best and accumulate the best talent and put this team that has done so well in the roughly 18 months they've been in Major League Soccer, right? When you go through, if you look at the starting lineup, Joe Willis was an expansion draft pick. Right, so they go get Dan Lovitz for just a couple $100,000 from Montreal Impact at the time. Right, that's a great trade. Dave Romney, I think, was roughly about $350,000-$400,000 in allocation money. He's played every minute of every game. Walker Zimmerman, he is a player that I didn't even think was for sale with LAFC. Right, He ends up being the MLS Defender of the Year for just over $1 million. And Alistair Johnston was picked up in the college draft, 12th overall. Dax and Anibal, you look at those guys. Well, those are two guys that I think collectively cost about $750,000. You see guys like Mark Anthony Kaye now going for over $1 million. Julian Gressel went for more money from Atlanta to DC than the two midfield pairing. And you start to go forward from there. CJ Sapong, a free agent. And look, that's just kind of roughly going through the team really quickly. And you start to look at a lot of the other players that they've put together. Those are just players that are here in front of you, that if you scout well, that if you approach it in a systematic way in which how can we get the best return on our investment, and that leaves you elsewhere to go and buy players, right? And then they go and they make a big investment in Ake Loba, right? A guy they chased for almost 2 years. So the way the team has been put together, I don't think it's talked about enough. And I think because they've been so good and so organized defensively, last year they were the best team an expansion team has ever had defensively. Well, this year in fewer games, they're one shutout off of tying that. You know what I mean? Already. So, and last year, obviously, a shortened season with 23 games, but 9 shutouts in 23 is really good. 8 shutouts and I believe 19 games now for Nashville SC is also very good. So now they're adding goals to it. And I think they're sitting on something like 31 goals already. So people, when they look at Orlando City, don't they say that they're a very attacking team and they score a lot of goals and it's great? Orlando's got 28 goals. Nashville has 31. So they've added that element to the game. So that's a long-winded answer of what the last 18 months and sort of build-up has looked like. But I think that it's a worthy 2.5 minutes. I just talked your ear off, because when you start to put it in that perspective, you start to realize there's been some really good work that maybe isn't like flashy. So people don't look at it and go, wow, there's an 8-figure signing. There's more fuss made about Winter going to FC Cincinnati. You know what I mean? We heard plenty about that, but we didn't hear about how a team was built, for far less than half of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, we were talking, I was talking to Jordan just before you got on, and we were talking about like that blueprint. Like, what does that blueprint look like for an expansion club? And when you look at it, and I had listened to you and Tony Husband talk on your last, like the NSC backstage, and you guys were talking about just kind of the panic and the understanding that this is an 18th month. I mean, this has been a stretch of 18 months where it's been great. I mean, if you look at other teams, Orlando City really struggled when they entered the league. Miami's still in this disarray, buying as many players as they can and getting into trouble with it, and just kind of having this, okay, what do we do now? I don't know what direction we're going in. Like you said, Cincinnati bringing in Brenner. It just seems like Nashville, and I don't know if it was Air that, brings that kind of feeling to the club as far as the ownership, but it seems like they understand how to put together a team as compared to maybe say, Orlando City did it first, or Inter Miami's still struggling, like Cincinnati's still struggling. Yeah, no, and first of all, thank you for listening to the backstage show. It's great. We have a great time doing that show. Me and Tony do, and when you look at the way Nashville have done it, I think they went about it in such a strong belief in what they were doing that they were like, this is our system and our thought process, and we're going to stick to it and kind of adhere to it. Read a great piece in The Athletic today from Paul Tenorio, right, former Orlando City Sentinel reporter there, turned big time to The Athletic. He does a phenomenal job. And he talked about with Inter Miami, the headline was, we wanted to build a brand, not a team, right? Like that was a way and an approach that Inter Miami had, where they had these ambitions of grandeur, right? Like it had to be big. It had to be fitting to this. But we've also seen sort of how everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, right? You talk to some of the biggest names in the world coaching-wise, but they all fell through. And then you get Diego Alonso, who admittedly, CONCACAF Champions League, great coach, just doesn't work out. Then you've got this approach of young players. Then it shifts now to older players that Beckham can use his connections with and stuff like that. Okay, that's one way to do it, but you see where that's got you. Whereas Nashville said, this is where our lane is, and we know what we want to do, and it's hyper-focused. Does it fit what we want? Are there guys that are underappreciated? Did anybody think Dave Romney was this caliber of center back? Admittedly, no. And one of the last games I worked with Minnesota United was against LA Galaxy.
and LA Galaxy knocked Minnesota out of the playoffs. And I watched Dave Romney play on the day, and I remember thinking like, okay, he's a good player, but he wasn't great. Now watching play against Walker Zimmerman, and with Walker Zimmerman being away with the Gold Cup and out through a little bit of injury this season, I think the appreciation has come full circle with Dave Romney. Every minute of every game, I mean, it's insane. And then you start to see the college scouting network to find Alistair Johnston. Mm-hmm. He is a mainstay for the Canada men's national team, who I think right now we'd argue is maybe the third best team in CONCACAF. Won't be long probably before your teams come knocking over in Europe for him. These were all guys that fit the mold. Joe Willis was left exposed in an expansion draft. Mm-hmm. He has 17 shutouts in the last season and a half. You know what I mean? Like, you're starting to pick up these pieces. Dan Lovitz, former left back for the U.S. men's national team. Dax McCarty on the outside Chicago. They go and get him, and what a signing he's been. You mentioned 400 games played for Dax McCarty. He's been a wonderful servant. And by the way, he looks like he's got another 100 left in him. You know what I mean? So it's an insane buildup. And then you go and find Hani Mukhtar, who right now is playing some of the best soccer. Mm-hmm. We've seen he's tied with CJ Sapong, again, a free agent signing, and CJ Sapong, who's got 8 goals already on the season. Like, are you kidding me? Hani's got 8 goals and 6 assists, I think. I mean, you're getting this incredible output. You know, Randall Leao, throw him in there as well, because those players have been stellar the last 6 weeks or so. It's a team that's firing on all cylinders, and the question coming into the season was, can they score goals? Well, they've scored a few of them. Scored 5 the other night.
Yeah, with you brought up Dax and even like Joe Willis, and Joe Willis, I was always a fan of him as a keeper. My dad's a DC United fan, so I feel like I always watched a lot of DC games. So I saw a lot of Dax. I saw a lot of, Joe Willis. But I feel like Dax was always underappreciated everywhere he went almost. Like, he'd become captain for a year, and then they ship him out. And then, he went from like Dallas to DC to Red Bulls to Chicago and now to Nashville. So I'm glad to see that it seems like Nashville fans and Nashville itself is really taken to Dax. And
mind you, been a captain everywhere he's been, right?
Yeah,
I mean, captain at DC when he went there. He was traded for Dwayne De Rosario.
Yeah.
Guys, arguably one of the 10 best players that's played in this league, 15 best players that's played in this league.
Yeah.
And then he gets traded there. Then he goes to New York. He goes to Chicago. He's a captain of New York Red Bulls when they win supporter shields twice over. He goes to Chicago, still the captain with a guy named Bastian Schweinsteiger there.
Yep.
World Cup winner, you know what I mean? Like, and then he comes in and he's been the perfect captain for this club to bring him into Major League Soccer. And I can't wait for that moment when he gets to lead the team out at the new stadium next year, because I think he'll be a fitting leader for this team on the day. He's been a fitting leader leading into where he's taking the club now. So it's been a thrill to watch him play. It's a joy to get to commentate on him each week.
So Don Garber was visiting, I saw on Twitter, visiting the stadium. Can you kind of just speak to the process, what's going on there, when they're expecting that thing to open up, and then just kind of fill us in on what's going on with the stadium process?
Yeah, I think we're less than a year away. And when you look at the stadium, it's going to be 30,000 seats. It should be the largest soccer-specific stadium. And when in the U.S. and Canada, and you look at it and you start going, wow, like, this is the stadium that's taking life, right? Like, we know how great it was playing all those years at the Citrus Bowl and Camping World Stadium. But when Exploria Stadium opened, everything about the experience is heightened, right? Because these stadiums are constructed from the moment you park your car to the moment you're in your seat and back. Everything is about the experience of the fan, right? You're so close. I think right now, if you took the stadium, which, keep in mind, 30,000 seats, you could drop it into Nissan Stadium where the team plays now. And I think it goes back to just where the club seats start, so right at the top of the lower level, to like row 9 or 10. You know what I mean? So you're basically fitting the stadium, you're condensing it almost in half from what they play in now. And so it's going to be covered. It'll be amazing, privately funded. It's just been a way in which it's going to transform the area that it's in, much like it's done with Exploria Stadium. And it's just going to be this wonderful experience for a fan, but also it's going to add hopefully to the home field advantage of the team here. It's really the evolution of the club, and a lot of teams sometimes have to wait in their plan for success on the field until they get the stadium. Nashville hit the ground running and found that success right away. So now they've got a very successful, good team that should be in the playoffs each season, opening up a new stadium next year. and it's going to be one of the hottest tickets in town here in Nashville.
So you talked a little bit earlier about Alistair Johnson, and I listened to the episode that you guys had him on, and you talked about European aspirations. Can you
He's
guys
great, by the way, huh? He's what a guest.
Yeah.
From a host to a host right now. You dream of an Alistair Johnston.
I was going to say, because when I was listening to him, I'm like, he could almost have his own podcast. I mean, that's how interesting.
Don't give him any ideas. We need listeners.
Right.
Right, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I saw you had Dax working with you guys upstairs in the booth, but he's
going to take my job when he's ready for
it. Right. So guys like that, I mean, it is, but like Alistair Johnson is most fascinating to me because when we had Drake on, he goes, he wasn't ever considered in that position where he's currently playing. They're like, he doesn't quite understand it, but he's learning it. Well, he's learned it pretty well because he's deserved as much time he's gotten with Canada national team. Can you kind of just speak to his rise? Because that's been just a blast to watch.
So he's a fantastic human being, first off.
Mm-hmm.
I love when good things happen to good people, and he's a wonderful guy. He's worked very hard. He's improved in his areas. He's a very good 1v1 defender, very aggressive. He's smart. He knows when his moments are to engage in a challenge. He also knows when it's best to jockey in a challenge and then also try to use his pace to close down. Or if he gets in a foot race, I fancy him in a lot of foot races with a lot of players. His ability to shift into the outside center back in a 3-back role with Canada was something that really blew me away in important games and World Cup qualifiers in the Gold Cup. They're playing against Mexico at AT&T Stadium, which is basically an away game when you're playing Mexico. I mean, I'm from Dallas. Yeah. I know what that's like. And having been in those crowds, it's a tumultuous environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real home field advantage for Mexico. That's why Mexico plays their games in the United States,
right?
Because they can get large crowds. People are there and they turn out, right? So that shows a lot what John Herdman, the Canada men's national team, thought of him. And when you look at Alistair Johnston's maturation last year, he was drafted 12th overall. Right, so there were 11 other picks of teams that could have picked him along the way. And Dylan Nealis was drafted 3rd overall to Inter Miami as a right back. Now, Dylan Nealis has since been traded to Nashville. They're both on the team. So arguably they got 2 of the best outside backs in the draft last year on the roster right now. But his maturation has just really improved. And I'm excited to see him take that next level even more so going forward and being able to provide assists. He's worked on his crossing. His delivery has gotten much better. His timing of when to join into the attack and just reading up the game has definitely improved. I think there's still a bigger ceiling for him. But when we talked to Stephen Caldwell on our NSC Backstage, our radio show, he said that, and he's the assistant coach along with for Canada, as well as being the TSN analyst with Luke Wildman. Stephen said that he thinks Alistair Johnson should be playing in a top 5 club or a top 5 league in this world, no problem. For a whole host of clubs would be lining up for his services, and said he's an outstanding, one of the best young talents in Canada right now. I mean, he's playing on the opposite side from Alphonso Davies, who's the best 11. Richie Larea, another name from Orlando. They've sort of moved him to that right wing back role in the 3-5-2 because I think they see Alistair Johnson as maybe a slightly better 1v1 defender, and maybe Richie being slightly better going forward, to his credit. But that was Richie's spot, that right side, and he was first. Now I think it's 1A, 1B, and that wasn't easy to do because Richie looked like he had that spot locked in pretty well. So I'm enjoying him while he's on Nashville because I don't know how long that is for, and could be 12, 18, 24 months, hopefully longer, but the kid's got a huge future ahead of him.
It's just funny to listen to his stories, talk about Alphonso Davies. And I know just listening to you talk to him, it was exciting just to hear him say, I'm playing next to one of the best defenders in the world. And he's literally, he goes, I grew up watching him. Now I'm playing with him. I don't know what to think half the time. But
he was like, and these guys know my name. I'm players for the Canada men's national team. I'm like, Alistair, yeah, man, they probably asked the coach if you could be starting, bro. Like, of course they know your name.
Right.
So tomorrow, Nashville takes on Orlando. They go. That is
at Nissan.
At Nissan Stadium. So that's 2 games in a row. There, they have not lost there. What do you think their prospects here for Orlando, who've kind of slipped recently as they went from 2nd down to 4th, and now Nashville's kind of leapfrogged them in the last few weeks?
Well, it's great because I think you're starting to see the fruits of labor from Oscar Pareja and from Luis Muzi the work that they've done, and again, some of the work of the other coaches as well before James O'Connor, and you look at some of the groundwork that's laid. Now you're starting to see those plans and ideas that were put in place really starting to really take full effect. When these two teams met last year, the season series I think went 1-1. Two of the games were at Exploria last year, and I know that those were the two games in which Nashville they got a draw, I think at home, and they lost and they won at Exploria Stadium. I'm thinking back to last year, and geez, I can't even think what I had for lunch earlier today. But when you look at the games, they were all very tightly contested. Nashville went up on the road at Exploria through a Dave Romney header, and then I think it went 3-1. Daryl Dike did what Daryl Dike does, and he just was incredible on the night. Scored 2 goals, I think. 1-1 here. I know Benji Michel had an absolute screamer here at Nissan Stadium. Randall Leal scored to tie that up, and then the last game of the season, regular season last year, I think Orlando went up twice. Nashville came back and tied twice, and ultimately won in the 93rd minute. So it's always close when these two teams play. I think there's an appreciation and a mutual respect between the two teams because it's two teams that believe in what they do each as a team. So it's not as if one team changes what they do to accommodate another. And normally when you see that happen, it tends to be open games that have more goals because there are going to be moments in which what you as a team likes to do gets the better of the other team. And there are going to be moments in which, because you didn't maybe change your game plan to accommodate something that the other team's good at, maybe what they're good at exposes you, right? So I think looking at these two teams, I think it'll be a very entertaining, exciting match. If I'm scrolling through ESPN Plus and I'm a neutral and my team's not playing on the night, this is the game I'm choosing to watch because I think this game has got some goals in it, and I think that it's got some exciting players right now that are playing some really good soccer. So it'll be an entertaining matchup, and I don't think it'll be boring. That's my prediction.
So kind of talking about like expectations as I mean, going forward, again, it's a team that clearly, and I had listened to a bunch of podcasts for Nashville, and just, the initial panic and freak out of like, oh no, we're starting to just draw and lose matches. We can't win on the road. It's been difficult. All we do is lose or draw on the road. Is there anything to kind of take from that? I mean, I know it's got to be somewhat concerning. You're starting to get to a point where if it starts to keep happening, it kind of becomes that trend. Is there a concern in that? And then also, I mean, that's got to have huge implications, right, going forward to at least get one of those top 4 spots because you're playing at Nissan.
Yeah, it'd be great to have a home playoff game, wouldn't it? Every team wants that. That's the goal, right? It means you've done something well to be in that top 4 spot, like you mentioned, Logan. Is there a concern? Who's the concern? The question too, is it to the players? Because I don't think there's one bit of concern from a player standpoint, because whatever criticism as a player you get, and having been a former player, I think I understand this one pretty well. One of the best sayings that's really well known amongst maybe even really any sport, but especially soccer players, with social media and the invention of that, and everyone having a podcast and a blog, and you can hear everyone's opinion on twitter.com for free, right? I was an 8th grade B team level basketball player, but I could go in and I could talk about the Dallas Mavericks right now or the Orlando Magic. And, if you don't know my background, you might think this guy knows what he's talking about, when really I wasn't very good, guys. So from your standpoint, one of the best things I ever heard was never take criticism from somebody you wouldn't take advice from, right? So I don't think you're going to go to your mentions and look for something that somebody says and go, wow, I'm going to listen to that and I'm going to take that to heart in the field next time I'm in this situation. So you shouldn't also say, oh, well, they say we can't do this, or this person says we're not good at doing this, so I'm not going to do that. So never take criticism from somebody you wouldn't take advice from. I don't think there's one bit of doubt about the belief in the locker room and the camaraderie that Gary Smith has built with that team. I think that team knows exactly who they are and what they want to achieve. Have they gotten all the results they want on the road? Absolutely not. No, they expect themselves to win every game. A game that they don't win, they're going to sit there and go, well, we expected more from this game, right? It's the mindset of a player. That's why they're there. Like, athletes at that level are just wired differently. As pundits, we could say that's a great result. That's a great tie. And they may go, well, hang on a second. Why is it a great tie? Because In Toronto, Hani Mukhtar had a header late on that could have made it 2-1. And, that was such a great buildup. Maybe we should have scored that and we should be walking out here with 3 points. But you're saying good draw as the TV pundit, the TV color commentator. Perspectives are different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think there's one bit of doubt in that locker room right now. I haven't seen the players. We get a chance to be around them from a distance, right? And we get to see what they believe, and they think they genuinely believe they should win every game every time they step onto the field. So I don't think they have one bit of doubt. I understand the concern and reading what other people say, but let me tell you how little that affects the group. They may look at it and go, okay,
Right.
if we would have won every single game on the road this season, would you be saying we're the greatest team that's ever played? No. So stop saying we're not great at this when you don't win. Perspectives are different. Depends on who's giving it and who's taking it. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I got one last question before you go here about not Nashville specifically, but about your time as a player when you played for Austin Aztecs. And now that Austin now has because then they moved to Orlando, but now that Austin has an MLS team, did you ever get a vibe in Austin that it could become an MLS city and the atmosphere that's been showing there recently?
At the time, no. And I was there for a little bit in 2009 and 2010. And to be quite honest, that's why the team was moved from Austin to Orlando, because everything that they wanted to accomplish in Major League Soccer, there was so much pushback that it just wasn't on the cards at the time. So for it to do a 180, look, Austin's great. If you said right now, congrats, you won the lottery last night, you have 9 figures in your bank account right now, where do you want to go build a second house? I'd go to Austin and build right on Lake Travis. I loved my Austin. What a place, right? I'd also have one at New Smyrna Beach. Don't worry, I'd have more than one.
That's beautiful too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But when you look at it and you start going, this is a great town. It's young, it's vibrant, it's diverse. It's got its own feel to it, and the people and the fans there were great when we were there. The facilities, we were playing at House Park, which is a Austin Independent School District's field, so you couldn't sell beer at it. You couldn't make money, through alcohol sales. You couldn't get your own stadium. You had all of these hurdles that made it a business that wasn't viable. Mm-hmm. Now they go and build a new stadium. Now they're the only professional team in town. Now they're the talk of the town. They are right. It's like why one of the big secrets to Orlando City was they were the second team in town to the Magic.
Yep.
Magic almost disassociated themselves from the community, right? Orlando City went the other way, and we were like, no, we are a team of the community. I maybe spent more time doing community appearances than I actually did playing for Orlando City over the course of 3 years. Right. And I'm proud of that. I think that's why it works. I think that's why we all started supporting this team, because you felt a connection to the team. We tried to do it in Austin. There were just so many hurdles at the time. And then you go to Orlando and you saw how organic it was, how natural it was, how real it was. Look, it's why originally Flavio wanted to come by the team, and then they strayed from it. It's why the Will family saw what was there, and they wanted to come and buy and pay a monopoly type amount of money for it, and they see what the value of it is. And I love seeing Mark Wilf and the Will family putting themselves about. I think that they're genuinely going to correct a lot of the mistakes that were made over the past couple of years, because I think Orlando City got away from their identity.
Yeah.
I really feel strongly about that. And as a former player, it disappointed me a lot. I don't think Adrian Heath ever should have been let go in the first place. Mm-hmm. I think that was a personal decision more than it was a soccer decision. But without going too far down that, I think that Orlando City faded from their identity, and their identity was the wall. It was the fan base. It was the connection. And there wasn't that organic connection anymore. It's what we tried to start in Austin, found it in Orlando. It strayed a little bit from Orlando, but I genuinely feel this ownership change will be one. The dog agrees with me. I preach, right. Pub talk. But I'm excited to see what the future holds for Orlando City. Nashville has done an amazing job of cementing itself here in the community as well. It's something that I love being out and about and meeting people in the community. We've got this guy named Brandon Hill who does an amazing job with the community outreach. Chris, Fred, Kylie, they do the fan engagement. We've been doing Zooms over the course of last year with fans, with players. It's been great to try to connect in ways that, maybe have difficult over the last year, right? This team's really committed to it. And I think that's why it's going to work, because I see a lot of similarities in Nashville that I saw in Orlando. And that's what gets me the most excited to go to work, to go to a community event, to go to Napier Elementary School and connect with the kids there and stuff like that. So, everything that Austin wanted to find, to circle back to the original, they found in Orlando, and Nashville I've seemed to find here. And I fell in love with Orlando. I've already started to fall in love with Nashville, and we've planted roots and we have a home, and our daughter was born here. So it's a special place, just like Orlando City was for my family and I as well.
I was going to say, as someone who is a season ticket holder at Orlando City, it is like you said, I mean, it's special to see the wall. It's, it's special to see the ruckus. It's, going to Exploria and that beautiful stadium that they built. And like you said, with the Will family, you want it to be everything and more, especially with the way Oscar's been. It's been just a special time. And I know that I know from experience that the fans appreciated you and your time here and, that club, because it brought professional soccer to Orlando. And like you said,
winning,
champion. Yep. So, it's amazing because just seeing what you guys did. And like you said, it's unfortunate because the Magic did a nice job of trying to isolate themselves from everybody else that, they had given so much to that team. But I know from experience that Orlando City fans, just talking to, friends and people that were in the wall, just how much they appreciated your time and everybody's time here. But yeah, we really enjoyed having you on, Jamie. It's really cool just to get your perspective, hearing about Nashville. Again, we get so caught up in other teams and stuff like that. It's nice to kind of take a break from it and kind of talk just one specific team and kind of crunch the numbers and see what somebody that's on the inside thinks covering the team. But we really appreciate it. And I love the work that you and Tony do. Like I said, I'm an Orlando City fan at heart, but it's hard not to watch Nashville now. Like with the feed, I might just switch over and just watch your feed coming up tomorrow night and kind of hope that the boys in purple can do something a little bit special there in Nashville for you.
It'd be a great game. We're looking forward to it. Tony and Kelly and I can't wait to call it. It'll be a special game. Always seeing Orlando City because there's so many special memories shared, and that means a lot to you. Those kind words, because carry those with me deeply and close to my heart. So thanks for having me on. Anytime these two teams meet, I would love to come back on. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, Logan.
All right, that was Jamie Watson, the Jamie Watson Derby coming up tomorrow. Right.
He should get a cup.
Commentator of Nashville and former Orlando City player. Mm-hmm. I guess the real one would be if Orlando faced Minnesota United. That would be that'd be something. It looks like he also played for Charleston.
He did. He played. Well. He was on a loan spell with Charleston, I think, for a match or two.
Yeah, it was a match.
I see like a match on Fat Mob. So, but no, I know. Talking to people, they know him. Like, and I've listened to Nashville podcasts.
That was a big team. I mean, they were in the USL, but they were winning. They had Dom Dwyer on loan from SKC, and he tore it up, and they were winners. And that was I mean, look, as somebody that was watching MLS back then, they made news they just made news where, like, as an MLS fan, you're still watching. Like, I was watching USL stuff, and I was keeping an eye on Orlando City because, we vacation Orlando all the time, and that would be something I'd kind of keep an eye on. And when we went, they would play at, they definitely played at Wyral Sports for a season or two as well. Yep. But just kind of seeing them, like I would follow that, like, oh, they need to get into MLS, and then they eventually did, but. Yeah, they were kind of a big deal. They even had Wayne Rooney's brother on their team for a time as well, John Rooney. But yeah, go ahead and continue your thoughts. Sorry, I just wanted to say that they were a big deal. They were a big deal.
Well, I mean, and just talking to people, that's how I knew who Jamie was. Like, I knew who Jamie was prior to all of this and when he started, because I knew of his Orlando City roots. I knew people that had talked about the time of that team, and that team was special. And like you said, I mean, you followed a lot more than I did. But seriously, going to the stadium, if you mention him, they know him, they know of the team, they know the special memories that they have. And like you said, Orlando City had been, it was kind of a disaster when they started, right? The ownership was a disaster. The team didn't really go in the right direction. Obviously, the Adrian Heath is huge because they had a big falling out.
Yeah, they had a rough start because they're an expansion team. It's kind of what we see from Austin right now.
Yep.
Not all of them can be like Nashville or Atlanta, So that was kind of a rough spell, and it led to pressure because the fans were expecting a winner from at USL days, and that eventually led to, I don't know, whatever behind the scenes and stuff, but there was fan pressure when I was down there during their inaugural season. I was tuning into sports radio. There was fan pressure for Heath to go at times. So I don't know if they just, caved or it seems like there's hints of other personal things that I'm not aware of, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, so it's cool because like he's so tied up in everything. I mean, all MLS, if you really think about it, just Minnesota and then the Will family coming from Minnesota. It is like when Orlando or Minnesota or Nashville play each other, I feel like Jamie's got like, oh man, I'm in Nashville right now. I'm a Nashvilleite and I have to perform here, but he's like he said, he's a lot of my heart's still in Orlando. I love Orlando City and what I built there and how I helped. And I know, reading stuff about Jamie, he's always been involved in community outreach and being involved in the community and talking to fans, and that's so big. And if you go on their Twitter, and we'll drop their stuff in the show notes and stuff, but if you go and follow that NSC backstage, it's like the quintessential, or like the behind the scenes. It's that quintessential follow for just anybody that's a Nashville fan, just because he and Tony do such a good job. It's like having a fireside chat, and then they bring on really cool guests. Like you said, Alistair obviously was on the other day. But again, it's cool just to kind of get his perspective because he's been everywhere. He's worked in so much, a lot of television, working so many different leagues. It's fascinating. So that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. So, and I just like a good story because they can tell good stories.
Yeah, that was great time. So let's talk real quick some news. There was an extension as Union just continue extending people here. They extend Olivier Mbazio to a multi-year contract extension. He's 24 years old. He's played 18 of their 19 matches. He's kind of getting some stick from the fans, I think, a little bit. But really. Being an impromptu start to the season because Ray Gaddis announced his retirement super late, so he's done well. He's been a little bit of a standout. Sometimes he's been lately giving up a little bit of passes for goals and not tracking back and stuff. But that stuff is going to happen. He'll adjust. But it's nice to see another extension there for the Philadelphia Union. And let's go ahead and get our schedule out of the way. So there's 2 games tonight, the night we're recording this of Tuesday. So we won't know what those score lines will be, but they're both at 10:30 as the Galaxy take on the Rapids in like a top 4 matchup, which should be really fun. And that's in LA. And then we also have San Jose Quakes versus Minnesota. That's also at 10:30, like I said. Both of those are on ESPN Plus. That one's in San Jose. Then tomorrow, the 18th, we have Atlanta versus Toronto at 7 o'clock. New England versus DC at 7. That one's at Gillette. Cincinnati versus Montreal at 7:30. Miami versus Chicago at 7:30. Philadelphia versus NYCFC at 7:30. I'm dreading that one. NYCFC play us so good all the time. That's at Subaru. That's at Subaru Park. Red Bulls versus Columbus in Red Bull Arena. That's interesting to see if Columbus can turn it around at any point. Mm-hmm. Dallas versus Seattle. Dallas coming off a loss. Seattle coming off a triumphant win against a rival. We'll see how that goes. We have Sporting Kansas City versus Portland at 8:30. Nashville versus Orlando, which we just talked to Jamie about. That's at 8:30 at Nissan Stadium. Austin at 9 o'clock versus Vancouver. And Real Salt Lake and Houston at 10 o'clock. All of those are on ESPN Plus or your local channel, so check your local channels if you're within those markets. Friday, we have LA Galaxy versus San Jose on ESPN2 at 10:30. Then on Saturday, we have Columbus versus Seattle at 5:30 on Big Fox. Then at 8 o'clock, we have DC United versus Atlanta. 8 o'clock, we have Miami versus Toronto. 8 o'clock, we have New England versus Cincinnati. Then on FS1 at 8 o'clock, we have Red Bulls versus New York City FC in the Hudson River Derby. That's on FS1. Orlando versus Chicago at 8 o'clock. Philadelphia Union versus Montreal at 8 o'clock. Houston versus Dallas at 8:30. Austin versus Portland at 9. Colorado versus Salt Lake at 9. And at 10 o'clock, we have Vancouver versus LAFC. And then on Wednesday, August 25th, we have the All-Star Game. So we'll talk about that next Tuesday, as it is the MLS All-Stars versus Liga MX All-Star Game, All-Stars for the All-Star Game on, like I said, the 25th. On the 26th, though, Pacific FC versus Vancouver in the Canadian Championship at 10 o'clock. So we'll talk about those two games as we'll preview those next week. And any other things you want to talk about before we head out of here?
No, I think we covered it all. Had a blast having Jamie on. Thanks, Jamie, if you're listening. Really appreciate you jumping on and give us some insight. And we'll have him on again. Definitely. That was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. So thank you, Jamie, for jumping on here. If you want to follow the show, it is on Twitter at Stateside Show, Instagram at Stateside Show, Facebook.com/Stateside Show, or email us statesideshow@gmail.com. All those links are also in the show notes. All right. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed our sit down with Jamie, and we will catch you next time where we talk about the midweek and weekend matches. Have a great one.